At my son's graduation, the man who had been secretly destroying my raised his glass with a smirk and said to the man who raised my boy for me. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging like a noose. But as the shock rippled through the crowd, my son stood, his voice trembling with rage as he declared, "You think you're my father? Let me tell you something that will change everything." What followed was a storm no one in that room could have foreseen. Secrets unraveled, lives shattered, and justice served in a way they would never forget. The evening had been one of those rare quiet nights. The kind where everything seemed in place, when life felt uncomplicated. The walls of our home, worn but warm, were decorated with decades of memories. Photographs on the mantel, trophies from our son's childhood, little mementos that marked the passage of time. The smell of dinner still lingered in the air, a mixture of freshly baked bread and roasted chicken. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic outside were the only sounds that accompanied us. As we sat at the dinner table, my wife, Mary, and I sharing a simple meal before the big event. It was a night I had looked forward to for years. Our son Alex was graduating from high school. It felt like only yesterday that I held his tiny hands in mine, teaching him how to walk, how to speak now. At 18, he was on the cusp of something greater, and I couldn't have been prouder. He was everything I had hoped for in a son. Bright, confident young man with a heart full of promise. "Your tie is crooked," Mary said, offering a soft smile as she adjusted it for me. She looked as beautiful as always, her dark hair perfectly styled, her eyes bright with excitement. "Thanks," I said, smiling back at her. "How do I look?" "Like the proud father you are," she replied, brushing off her apron as she stood to clear the table. It was a simple moment, but it felt perfect. So perfect that I couldn't have predicted the storm that was coming. As I watched Mary move around the kitchen, I caught myself thinking about how lucky I was. I had a wife who loved me, a son I cherished, and a life that many would envy. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that seemed out of place. Or so I thought. But as I looked at her again, something felt off. Just a flicker in the way she held herself, a glance she gave me that was too subtle. Something in the air felt strained. I couldn't pinpoint it, but I couldn't ignore it either. Still, I shrugged off the feeling. We were about to celebrate one of the biggest milestones of our lives. I had no idea that the night would end with my world crashing down. The tension had been building for weeks now, and I had been too blind to see it. Mary had started acting distant, withdrawn. She'd been spending more time out of the house, always with some excuse. Her phone, which used to be left unattended on the kitchen counter, was now constantly in her hands, her face hidden behind its screen whenever I walked into the room. And then there were the late-night messages, the way her expression would change when I asked about them, the brief moments of hesitation before she'd swipe them away. At first, I tried to brush it off. Life had been busy, with Alex's graduation and all. But then I started noticing other things. Her perfume lingered on a shirt that wasn't mine. She'd forget to mention certain details about her day, or when I asked where she had been, she'd fumble for an answer. I should have seen the sign sooner, but I didn't want to believe it. Not her. Not Mary. She had always been my rock, the person I trusted most in this world. But with each passing day, I felt myself slipping into a quiet paranoia, a creeping fear that something was wrong. The discovery came by accident, the way all the worst discoveries do. One afternoon, while Mary was out, I found her phone left behind in the kitchen. My stomach churned as I reached for it, knowing I shouldn't, but unable to resist the urge. I unlocked it, my hands trembling, and opened the Messages app. I froze there, right at the top. Was a thread of messages between Mary and a name I didn't recognize. My heart raced as I read the words that would haunt me forever. "I miss you. I can't stop thinking about you. When will you be home?" It was like a punch to the gut. I read on, unable to stop myself, each message like a knife twisting deeper. There were photos, 2 photos that were too intimate, too personal. My vision blurred as I stumbled back against the counter, the weight of it all crashing over me. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to throw everything in the house. But instead, I stood there frozen, my heart breaking with every word. The worst part was the name. At the end of the conversation, David, a man I'd never heard of before, yet one who seemed to know everything about my life, about Mary, about Alex. I didn't need to ask who he was. The evidence was all too clear. I couldn't wait any longer. The confrontation was inevitable, and the time had come. As the evening of Alex's graduation approached, I steeled myself for what was about to unfold. The house was bustling with guests, the sound of laughter and conversation filling the air. But all I could think about was what I discovered, the betrayal that had festered beneath the surface for so long. I found Mary in the kitchen, her back to me, as she prepared the final touches for the evening. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment, taking in the sight of the woman I once loved, the woman who had deceived me in ways I could never have imagined. Mary, I said, my voice cold, trembling with rage and heartbreak. She turned startled, her smile faltering when she saw the look in my eyes. What's wrong? She asked, the false sweetness in her voice only fueling the fire inside me. I know, I said flatly, about David. Her face went pale, the blood draining from it as her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. You think I'm stupid? I continued, stepping closer, my voice rising with every word. You think I wouldn't notice the late nights, the secret phone calls, the way you've been slipping away from me for months. You think I wouldn't find out? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel sympathy for her. Not now. I never meant for it to happen, she stammered, but I didn't want to hear it. Don't lie to me, I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. You've been sleeping with him behind my back all this time. And now you expect me to just sit here and act like everything's fine. I'm sorry, she whispered, but the words felt empty. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of more guests. But something inside me snapped. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. I wasn't just going to let her get away with this. Not after everything we'd been through, everything I'd done for her, for this family. I stepped back from her, my fists clenched. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But above all, I needed to make them pay. The days that followed were a blur of tension and calculation. My mind raced with ideas, with ways to bring the two of them to their knees. David, the man who had stolen my wife, was a threat, a challenge I would not allow to go unpunished. And Mary. She was just as guilty. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I was done being the victim. I started small. Subtle. A few quiet words whispered in the right ears. A rumor here, a suggestion there. By the time I was done, David's reputation had been shattered. His business, once thriving, began to crumble under the weight of scandal and distrust. The people he had once called friends began to distance themselves. I made sure of it, using every weapon I had in my arsenal. But Mary was different. She would suffer more than just a ruined reputation. I wasn't done with her yet. No, she would feel the weight of her actions in a way she would never forget. The night of Alex's graduation arrived, and everything seemed to fall into place. The room was filled with well-wishers, but my focus was solely on the man I had come to despise, David, who had the audacity to show up as though nothing had changed. He stood tall, confident, with a smug look on his face as he prepared to make a toast. I watched as he raised his glass. The room grew quiet, all eyes on him. To the man who raised my boy for me, he said, with a grin, his voice filled with an air of superiority. For a moment, everything felt still, like the calm before a storm. And then Alex, my son, stood up beside him. He wasn't smiling. His face was set, his eyes cold. You think you're my father? Alex asked, his voice shaking with emotion. I have something to say that will change everything. The room erupted into chaos as Alex revealed the truth. His biological father wasn't David, but someone else entirely. My stomach churned as I watched the truth unfold before my eyes. The lies, the manipulation, the deceit, it all came crashing down in that moment. In the aftermath, Mary and David were left broken, their lives in tatters. The revenge I had carefully planned had been more effective than I could have imagined. But as I looked back at what I had done, I couldn't help but wonder if it had been worth it. Some betrayals don't break us, they build us into something stronger. But at what cost? Like this story, if you think justice was served, subscribe for more tales of betrayal, revenge, and the twisted paths we take to reclaim what's ours.